So the last category is divide complex numbers. So dividing complex numbers, probably not your favorite thing, but we'll get through it, okay? We're going to express as a complex number in simplest a plus bi form. So when you have a fraction, fractions do not like having I on the bottom. So we don't like this. We don't like the fact that maybe I should point not to the 9. We don't like this. We don't like the fact that there's an I here. So how do we get rid of the I? The trick to get rid of I is to multiply by the top and the bottom, multiply the top and bottom by the conjugate of the bottom. So instead of 9 plus I, it's 9 minus I. And I'm going to multiply top and bottom by the conjugate. I will write that out. Multiply top and bottom by conjugate of the denominator, which is the bottom. So we had a 9 plus I on the bottom. So I'm multiplying top and bottom by 9 minus I, the conjugate that we just learned. And then luckily for us, we know how to multiply because all you have to do is FOIL it. And so I know this is like kind of 2 problems in one because you have to FOIL the top and you have to FOIL the bottom, but it's okay. We will get through it. Let's start by FOILing the top. So we're going to do 15 times 9, and off the top of my head, I don't know what that is, so I'm going to use my calculator because we are allowed to. 15 times 9 is 135. Then we have outer, so 15 times negative I, so that's a minus 15I. Then we have I for inner. We're going to do 29I times 9, which gives us plus 261I. And then we're going to do last. So 29I times minus I, so minus 29I squared. Okay, so then let's do the same thing for the bottom. We're going to FOIL the bottom pieces. Let me get rid of that arrow. So FOILing stands for first, outer, inner, last. Let's do the first. 9 times 9, 81. Outer, 9 times minus I gives us minus 9I. I stands for inner, so 9 times I gives you plus 9I. And then L stands for last, so I times negative I will give you minus I squared. Any questions on that one? Okay, let's simplify the top and bottom. So let's do the top first. So we have 135 minus 15I plus 261I. And then instead of a minus 29I squared, remember the I squared is just a negative 1, right? So this can actually just turn to plus 29I. Oh, sorry, plus 29, no I. So instead of a minus 29I squared, since the I squared is a negative 1, it can just change the sign of the minus. So now it's a minus 29I squared becomes a plus 29. So that takes care of the I squared. Let's do the same thing on the bottom. 81 minus 9I plus 9I. Instead of a minus I squared, it's a plus 1. Because this would be, technically, this is minus a negative 1. Remember, you're subtracting a negative, that's like just plus 1. Same thing on the top, is a minus 29 times negative 1. So it's really just plus 29. That's how I got the plus 29 and the plus 1. Any questions? Okay, so let's keep going. Now let's do the combining like terms piece. So I guess I'll write it over here where I have space. We have 135 and 29. Just add that together. 135 plus 29 equals 164. And then we have our minus 15I plus 261I. And that gives us plus 246i. And on the bottom, do the same thing. So add up the real portions. 81 plus 1 is 82. And then the minus 9i and the plus 9i, technically they just cancel with each other. Because if you subtract 9i and you add 9i, that's plus 0i. So then that's how we get rid of the I piece. There's no more I piece here. I don't have to write plus 0i because that just means nothing. So we're almost done. We just have to divide. But before I do that, are there any questions about the cancellations or anything that happened? Last but not least, we just need to divide. So what is, let's see. I guess I could circle it in black, it's fine. 164 divided by 82. That gives me 2. And then what about 246i divided by 82? That gives me plus 3i. So literally just divide them. And then you get 2 plus 3i as your final answer. All right, final questions, please let me know. So 2 plus 3i. Okay, so if you ever forget, you can look at examples or you can just take a look at these. There's the steps here. Even though we finished the problem, they give you the steps. You multiply by the conjugate, and then you FOIL it on the top, and you FOIL it on the bottom. And then you simplify the I squared into the -1. And then you get your resulting fraction, and then you just divide out each piece. And you get 2 plus 3i. So it's the exact same steps that we did together. Let's go do the next example. Okay, so we got 8 plus 7i on top and 5 minus 8i on the bottom. Remember, you are multiplying by the conjugate of the bottom. So the 5 minus 8i, now we want 5 plus 8i. 5 plus 8i. So multiply by the conjugate of the bottom. Now we're going to do the foiling. So we're going to FOIL the top and FOIL the bottom. Let's do the FOIL of the top. F stands for first. That's 8 times 5. O stands for outer. That's 8 times 8i. I stands for inner. That's 7i times 5. So 35i. And L stands for last. So that's 7i times 8i, which will give us, oh my gosh, my brain is blanking. 56 I squared. Let's FOIL the bottom as well. So F in FOIL stands for first. 5 times 5 is 25. O in FOIL stands for outer. That's 5 times 8i, so that's plus 40i. I in FOIL stands for inner, so that's negative 8i times 5. So it's minus 40i. And then the L in FOIL stands for last, so that's the minus 8i times the positive 8i, which gives you minus 64i squared. Okay, so we FOILed the top, we FOILed the bottom. Now let's get rid of those I squareds, those pesky I squareds. I'm not changing anything here. Okay, so instead of a plus 56i squared, remember this is a plus 56 times a -1. So instead of plus 56 times -1, it's really minus 56. And then on the bottom, let's write out the first bits. 25 plus 40i minus 40i. Haven't changed anything there, but instead of a minus 64i squared, that's minus 64 times -1. That's really a plus 64. So just notice the sign changes. Instead of a plus on the top, we now have a minus on the top. Instead of a minus on the bottom, we now have a plus on the bottom. You just kind of flip the signs. That's what the I squared does, because I squared is -1, so -1 just helps you change the sign, essentially. Any questions on this part? All right, now we combine like terms. Let's combine our real portions. Oof, I'm running out of space. Okay, I'll write it over here. So 40 minus 56 gives us negative 16. So that's where we got that number. And now let's also combine our imaginary portions. So 64i plus 35i. That will give us plus 99i. So that's how I got that, by adding 64i and the 35i. So that's the top. Let's do the bottom. Combine the real portions. 25 plus 64. That gives you 89. And then let's do the imaginary portions. This was a plus. I know I kind of wrote over it. That was a plus 40i. And the minus 40i, they cancel out. Plus 40 and minus 40 cancel out. And that was the purpose, right? We don't want the I on the bottom. We don't want imaginaries on bottoms of fractions. So that's why we multiply by the conjugate, so that you will get them to cancel out. That is the whole purpose of using the conjugate. Use the conjugate so that the I pieces will cancel each other out. Okay, and so finally we have negative 16 plus 99i over 89. Are there any questions? Now we just have to rewrite it by dividing negative 16 over 89. Well, we can't simplify that, so I'm just going to write that as a fraction. It's okay if you have fractions. And then let's do the 99i over 89. And we have an I at the end. So this is your final answer. Yes, it's fractions, but it's okay. Fractions exist, and fractions are numbers, so it's totally fine. Are there any questions? So we got a question that says, couldn't you leave it as it was before since they're both fractions? Technically, we want the answer to be in a plus bi form. That's what they wanted in. So you want to separate it out into two terms, versus if you leave it as this way, that's like one term because it's like one fraction. But since we want it to have a and the bi, so like two separate portions, we have the real portion and the imaginary portion, you want to separate it into two separate fractions. So technically we would want the one in the box. And then as far as if Delta Math will accept this answer, I don't actually know. So I do want you to write it as this one, but let me double check just by entering it in to see if Delta Math will accept this one. So I'm just going to try this one, and if it's wrong, then I'll just enter it the correct way, and then you'll know if Delta Math accepts it or not, okay? So technically, when it's a plus bi form, I want it like this one where I have my giant arrow pointing. But let's see if Delta Math will accept this one. So let me go save this, and let me type it in as what I claim it shouldn't be, but let's see if it works. Actually, wait, I need parentheses. Well, okay, parentheses negative 16 plus 99i divided by 89. Let's see if this works. However, I wanted you to do it as two separate fractions, but let's see. Oh, okay, you know what? Delta Math accepts it. Although if you take a look at what they want as your answer, they want it as the two separates. However, if it works, I won't blame you for typing it in this way, because it works. Now we know. So good question. Technically, the two separate ones is correct, but if you left it as one fraction, I guess Delta Math accepts it too, so I will not dock points. Okay, let's do our last example. Wait, this is the last one, right? Yes. Okay, so we have negative 10 minus 7i over 2 minus I. So we want to multiply by the conjugate of the bottom. So 2 plus I. 2 plus I. And then on the top and bottom, we can do our foiling. So the F in FOIL stands for first. Let's do the top. Negative 10 times 2 is negative 20. The O in FOIL stands for outer. Negative 10 negative 10 times I is minus 10I. I in FOIL stands for inner, so that's negative 7I times 2, so that's minus 14I. And the L in FOIL stands for last. So negative 7I times I, which gives us minus 7I squared. Same thing for the bottom. First, outer, inner, last. Let's start with first. 2 times 2, 4. The O stands for outer, so 2 times I is plus 2I. The I in FOIL stands for inner, so it's minus I times 2, so it's minus 2I. And the L in FOIL stands for last, so that would be the negative I times the I, which would give you minus I squared. So we just FOIL the top and bottom. I still want to give you guys a chance to ask questions, so are there any questions? Let's keep going. So remember, this is a minus 7 times negative 1 because that's what the I squared means. So we're going to change that minus to a plus. Let's rewrite this. 20 minus 10I minus 14I. Didn't change anything of those, but we have a minus 7 times negative 1, so that's actually a plus 7. Bottom is the same. We have 4 plus 2I minus 2I. And then over here, we have a minus I squared. So that's technically a minus negative 1. That's a plus 1. So now we just need to combine like terms. So let me do that over here. Let's combine the real portions of the top. We have a 20 plus 7. That gives us 27. Let's do the imaginary portion. So we have a minus 10I and a minus 14I. That gives you minus 24I. That is our top portion. On the bottom, let's do our real portion. 4 plus 1. That gives me a 5. And then let's do our imaginary portion. We have a plus 2I and a minus 2I. Remember, that cancels out. Remember, we want it to cancel out because you do not like imaginary numbers on the bottoms of fractions. So now we have 27 minus 24I over 5. Are there any questions? Then I'm going to split this up into 2 fractions because the instructions tell me to. I know that Delta Math will accept this, so if you're just going to enter this, that's fine too. But I want to split it up into 2 separate terms because the instructions told me to, so I'm going to do that. We have a 27 over 5, and then we have a minus sign, and then we have 24I over 5, so 24 over 5I. And so I'm going to go ahead and type this in. Okay, so let me take a picture of this so that I have it recorded. Otherwise, I will forget what the answer is. Okay, so 27 over 5 minus 24 over 5I. 27 over 5 minus 24 over 5I. So this is the answer to the last one. And then I'm going to submit. Oops, our answer is not correct. All right, let me just double check our work then. Let's go back to our pictures. Okay, so here's our picture. What did I do wrong? Let's see. I want to pause the video and then you guys can help me look and see where our mistake is. If you can help me find it, that would be great. All right, we found our mistake. Let me see, where's my pen? Oh, I guess I have to edit it to get my pen back. And I have to click markup. All right, here's the mistake. I'll do it in yellow. Actually, I should do it in red because that's usually what mistakes are done. Okay, you see how it was a minus 20? I just did not write that. So thank you. So that negative sign, I just completely ignored it and then I forgot it existed. So we have to combine a negative 20 plus 7. So what is negative 20 plus 7? That will give us negative 13. And so this one would be a negative 13. Let me just rewrite it. Negative 13 over 5 minus 24 over 5i. Okay, does that look better?